There's a specific kind of silence that only exists deep in the mountains. It's not an absence of sound, it's a presence. It's the whisper of wind through 100-foot pines, the rustle of a deer in the undergrowth, the creak of old wood settling into the earth. For me, that silence was the sound of my soul breathing. It lived in a little A-frame house, tucked away on a winding road in the Blue Ridge Mountains. My house, my sanctuary. I bought it when I was 28. It was a stretch, a terrifying leap of financial faith. I worked 2 jobs. I ate ramen noodles for what felt like an eternity. I gave up vacations, new clothes, nights out with friends. I poured every spare dollar and every ounce of my being into the down payment and then into the mortgage. It was a small place, nothing grand. It had a stone fireplace that smelled of wood smoke even in July, a wide deck that looked out over a valley that turned to gold in the autumn, and a slightly crooked porch swing where I'd spent countless hours just being taught it was more than wood and nails and glass. It was my proof. Proof that I, Alara, the quiet one, the responsible one, could build something for myself. It was the one place on earth that was unequivocally, indisputably mine, or so I thought. The day the world tilted on its axis started like any other Tuesday. I was at my desk, staring at a spreadsheet, the numbers blurring into a meaningless gray haze. My cell phone buzzed. It was Mark, my realtor, the man who'd helped me find my mountain sanctuary all those years ago. He was a good man, steady and reliable. His name on my screen usually meant a Christmas card was coming, or he had a question about a local contractor. "Hey, Mark, what's up?" I said, leaning back in my squeaky office chair. His voice was careful. "Alara, hi. Sorry to bother you at work, but I have a strange question for you." I laughed a little. Strange is my middle name. Shoot. I was browsing the new MLS listings this morning, just keeping an eye on the market in your area, he began, and there was a pause that was just a little too long. "And your house came up." The spreadsheet on my screen snapped back into focus. The numbers sharpened. My house. What do you mean? Like as a comparable property for something else? "No, Alara," he said, and his voice was low, serious. "I mean, it's for sale. Active listing. Went up last night. Professional photos, a whole write-up. Charming mountain getaway, motivated seller." The air in my lungs turned to ice. It was a physical sensation, a painful coldness that spread from my chest out to my fingertips. My own house, for sale. It was impossible. A mistake. A glitch. In the system, Mark. That's not possible. I stammered, my hand gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. "I didn't list my house. There has to be a mistake. Some kind of clerical error." "I thought so too," he said, his voice laced with an apology he didn't owe. "I almost didn't call, but I looked at the listing details. Alara, the contact information for the seller's agent, it's not an agent. It's a private listing, and the name and phone number, it's your mother's. My mother's name, my mother's phone number, on a for sale listing. For my house. The world didn't just tilt. It fell away completely. The sterile hum of the office, the clicking of keyboards, the distant chatter of my colleagues, it all dissolved into a roaring static in my ears. There was only Mark's voice and the 2 facts he had just handed me. My house was for sale, and my mother was the one selling it. I don't remember ending the call with Mark. I think I mumbled a thank you. My next move was automatic, a muscle memory of a lifetime. When something is wrong, you call home. You call your parents. I scrolled through my contacts, my thumb shaking so badly I had to try 3 times to tap the right name. "Hi, sweetie." It was my mother, Carol. Her voice was bright, airy, completely normal, as if she hadn't just placed a stick of dynamite under the foundation of my life. "Mom, I said, and my own voice sounded foreign, a hollow echo. I just got a call from my realtor. Oh? She said, the single syllable dripping with feigned innocence. Everything okay? He tells me my mountain house is listed for sale online. There was no gasp, no denial, just a small, almost bored sigh. Oh, that, yes, your father and I listed it yesterday. She said it with the same casual tone she would use to tell me she'd picked up milk from the store. The static in my head vanished, replaced by a silence so profound it was deafening. I could hear my own blood pounding in my ears. You listed my house for sale? I whispered that my father, Richard, must have been on the extension. His voice, usually a deep, reassuring baritone, was clipped and businesslike. We did, Alara. We got a great photographer, really captured the afternoon light on the deck. I felt a hysterical laugh bubble up in my throat, but I choked it down. You can't list it. It's my house. My name is on the deed. It's legally mine. This is when my mother's voice lost its airy quality and hardened into something brittle and sharp. Don't be so dramatic, Alara. It's just a technicality. We needed to get the ball rolling. The ball rolling for what? I asked, though a cold, sickening dread was already telling me the answer. For your sister. Of course, she said, as if I were a simpleton. Chloe, she and her husband need a down payment for a house. They have a baby on the way, you know? They need to get out of that tiny apartment and into a real home before the baby comes. A family home. Chloe, my younger sister, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one for whom the rules always bent. She was pregnant, and suddenly my life's work, my sanctuary, had been downgraded to nothing more than a convenient ATM for her. So you're going to sell my house to give the money to Chloe? The words felt like shards of glass in my mouth. Well, of course, my father said, his voice full of that frustrating, patronizing logic he always used when he was about to steamroll me. It's the most sensible solution. You're single, you barely use the place. They're starting a family, they need it. It's for the good of the family. For the good of the family. That was the phrase they always used. It was the justification. For every sacrifice I was expected to make, every boundary I was expected to let them cross. It was a code, and I had just realized what it truly meant. It meant for the good of everyone but me. But you can't sell it, I repeated, my voice shaking with a rage that was finally starting to burn through the shock. I have to sign the papers. I own the house. You can't sell it without my signature. And then came the line. The one that severed the last thread of who I thought my parents were. It was my mother who said it, and her voice was cold, calm, and utterly unapologetic. Oh, don't worry about that, honey, she said. Your father can sign your name. His handwriting is very similar to yours. No one will ever know. Forgery. They were going to commit a felony. To forge my signature. To steal my property, the single most significant thing I had ever achieved, and hand the profits to my sister as a gift. And they admitted it, casually, without a flicker of remorse, as if they were discussing what to have for dinner. In that moment of absolute silence, hanging on the phone line between us, something inside of me broke. It wasn't a loud, shattering break. It was a quiet, clean snap. The part of me that had spent 34 years seeking their approval, valuing their opinion, believing in the foundational myth of our family, it simply ceased to exist. The daughter they knew died on that phone call, and the woman who was left was someone they had never met. Someone they had, in their breathtaking arrogance, just created. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. Arguing was what they expected. It's what I had always done. I would get emotional, they would get logical and dismissive, and in the end, I would be worn down, exhausted, and defeated. They knew that playbook by heart, but I wasn't playing that game anymore. Okay, I said. My voice was eerily calm, so devoid of emotion it seemed to startle even them. I heard my mother start to say something, but I didn't wait to hear it. I hung up the phone. I stood there in my cubicle for exactly 10 seconds. The world came back into sharp, crystalline focus, the gray spreadsheet, the hum of the computers, the scent of stale coffee. But I was seeing it all through new eyes. The fog of obligation, of filial duty, of a desperate need to be loved by people who were incapable of it, had lifted. And the clarity was blinding. They had made a critical mistake. They had told me their plan. They believed I was the same emotional, pliable girl they had always known. They assumed I would waste days, maybe weeks, arguing, pleading, crying. And in that time, they would find a buyer, forge my name, and the deal would be done. They had given me a head start, and I was going to use it. My thumb, no longer shaking, moved with precision across my phone screen. I didn't call my mother back. I called Mark. Alara? His voice was still full of concern. Mark, I said, and my tone was all business. The woman who had stammered and whispered to him just minutes before was gone. You were right. It wasn't a mistake. They intend to sell it without my consent. There was a stunned silence on his end. My God, Alara, that's illegal. You need to call a lawyer. You need to... No, I cut him off, but not unkindly. There's no time for that. They think I'm going to fight them. They're wrong. I'm going to beat them. I want you to sell my house. And I want you to do it faster than anyone has ever sold a house before. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head. What are you saying? I'm saying we're going to undercut their ridiculous amateur listing. I want you to relist it officially with you as the agent right now. Use the photos you have on file. We're not aiming for top dollar. We're aiming for speed. Knock 20% off the market value. In the listing description, I want you to write cash offers only, quick, close, essential, and mark. For you, if you can get me a signed contract and a closed deal within 10 business days, I will double your commission. He let out a low whistle. Alara, that's aggressive. A cash buyer, a discount like that? You'll have offers by tomorrow? That's the point, Mark, I said, looking out my office window at the indifferent city below. They started a race. They just don't know I'm already running. Can you do it? Consider it done, he said, a new energy in his voice. He understood. This wasn't a real estate transaction anymore. It was a rescue mission. As soon as I hung up with Mark, I swiveled in my chair back to my computer. But I didn't open the spreadsheet. I opened a web browser. I navigated to my bank's website, the one I use for all my personal finances. My hands flew across the keyboard, my fingers moving with a cold, surgical precision. Username, password, login. I went to the account settings. Authorized users. There they were, Carol and Richard. I'd added them years ago in case of an emergency, a relic of a time when I believed we were a team. I clicked the small X next to my mother's name. Are you sure you want to remove this user? A pop-up asked. A ghost of a smile touched my lips. I had never been more sure of anything in my entire life. Click. She was gone. I did the same for my father. Click. He was gone too. 2 clicks to sever a financial tie that had been strangling me for years. But I wasn't done. I navigated to the bill pay section. I saw the list of automatic payments I had set up. My car loan, my student loans, my credit card. And there it was, a monthly payment of $1,800. The destination account was my parents' mortgage company for their house. Not my mountain house, their house in the suburbs. 2 years. For 2 years, ever since my father had been temporarily laid off from his job, I had been paying their mortgage. It started as a loan, a one-time thing to help them get by. But then 1 month turned into 2 and 2 into 6, and soon it was just an unspoken assumption. Alara will handle it. Responsible Alara, with her good job and no family to support. I had made quiet sacrifices for that payment. I had put off fixing the transmission in my car. I had delayed my own dental work. I did it because I thought that's What a good daughter does. I stared at that recurring payment. $1,800 a month. To people who were, at that very moment, actively trying to steal from me. To people who saw my life's work as their personal piggy bank. My finger hovered over the delete button. This wasn't part of the plan to save my house. This was something else. This was about saving myself. Click. Are you sure you want to cancel this scheduled payment? Yes. The next few days were a blur of adrenaline and clandestine activity. I communicated with Mark only through a private email account I'd set up. He was a miracle worker. By Wednesday, we had 3 cash offers. One was from a developer who wanted to tear the place down. Another was from a young couple from the city, and the third was from the local county sheriff. He'd been looking for a quiet retirement property for years. He knew the area, and he was willing to pay in cash and close as soon as the title search was clear. The sheriff. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. We go with the sheriff, I told Mark over email. No question. The paperwork was drawn up. I took a half day off work, citing a dentist appointment, and drove to a title company in a town 30 miles away. I sat in a sterile, windowless room and signed my name over and over again. My real signature. Each stroke of the pen felt less like an ending and more like a beginning. I was selling my sanctuary, yes, but I was buying my freedom. The closing happened a week after that first fateful phone call. 1 week. Mark called me as I was leaving work. It's done, Alara, he said, and I could hear the relief in his voice. The money has been wired. It should be in your account within the hour. I thanked him, my voice thick with an emotion I couldn't quite name. It was a cocktail of grief, relief, and a strange, fierce joy. I drove home not to my apartment, but to a little park overlooking the city. I sat on the bench and opened my banking app on my phone. And there it was. A number with a lot of zeros after it. More money than I had ever seen in one place. After paying off the remaining mortgage on the mountain house, my student loans, my car loan, and a mountain of credit card debt I'd accumulated trying to stay afloat while paying my parents' mortgage, there was still a significant sum left over. A cushion, a safety net, a future. I started to cry. Not the hysterical, angry tears I had suppressed before. These were quiet tears of release. The weight I had been carrying for years, the financial burden, the emotional weight of their expectations, it just dissolved. For the first time since I was a teenager, I owed nothing to anyone. I was financially, completely, and utterly free. I sold my house, but I had bought back my life. I gave it 2 weeks. I knew it would take them at least that long to find a buyer and attempt their little forgery scheme. One spent those 2 weeks in a state of strange, calm anticipation. I went to work. I cooked dinner. I slept through the night for the first time in years. I didn't reach out to them. I didn't hear from them. It was a silent, peaceful Cold War. I had already won. They just hadn't found out yet. The explosion came on a Saturday morning. My phone, which had been blissfully quiet, suddenly lit up like a Christmas tree. Missed call. Mom. Voicemail. Mom. Missed call. Mom. Text message. Call me immediately. I let it go to voicemail again. I made a cup of coffee. I sat on my small apartment balcony. And then, with a deep breath, I listened to the message. Alara, where are you? I'm at the house. I brought the Hendersons up here. They're very interested, a full price offer cash. And the key isn't working. The locks have been changed. What did you do? Call me back this instant. I took a slow sip of my coffee. The Hendersons, they're fake buyers. I almost felt sorry for them being dragged into this mess. Almost. I dialed her number. She picked up on the first ring. What is the meaning of this, Alara? She shrieked, her voice a shrill instrument of panic. Changing the locks? How petty can you be? I have buyers here. First of all, Mom, I said, my voice is calm. As the morning air, they're not your buyers. Second, I didn't change the locks. Then who did? I imagine the new owner did, I said, and took another sip of coffee. It's standard practice. Silence. A thick, static-filled silence, the kind that precedes a hurricane. New owner? She whispered. Yes, I said. I sold the house. The deal closed 10 days ago. It's not mine anymore, so I'd appreciate it if you would get off his property. I could hear a muffled sound, like she had dropped the phone. Then a choked sob. You sold it. I did. But Chloe is not my responsibility, I said, and the words felt solid, true. My finances are not a family resource. The house is sold. It's over. I hung up before she could respond. The peace lasted for approximately 90 seconds. My phone rang again. This time, the caller ID was Chloe. I let it ring for a moment, then answered, putting it on speakerphone and setting it on the table. What the hell, Alara? My sister screamed, no preamble, no hello. Just pure, undiluted rage. Mom just told me what you did. How could you? How could you sell my house? My house. The entitlement was so profound, so deeply ingrained. It was almost breathtaking. Last I checked, Chloe, my name was on the deed, not yours, I said, my voice still infuriatingly level, but we were counting on that money. We have a baby coming. We need a home. You're so selfish. You always have been. You have a great job. You have all this money, and you can't do this one thing for your own family? For your own sister? For your future niece or nephew? I listened to her tirade, and I felt nothing, no anger, no guilt. Just a distant, clinical pity. She was a 30-year-old woman throwing a tantrum because her older sister had refused to allow her inheritance to be stolen ahead of schedule. She had no concept of work, of sacrifice. She only understood what she was given, what she was owed. And my parents had created this monster. My selfishness is what bought that house. In the first place, Chloe, I said quietly, my selfishness is what paid for it every month while you were out buying new cars and going on vacation. My selfishness is now my security. You and your husband are adults. It's time you learn how to provide for yourselves. Do not call me again. I disconnected the call, and for good measure, I blocked her number. Then I blocked my mother's. I sat there on my balcony, the sun warming my face, and for the first time, I felt the silence of the city. And it was just as peaceful as the silence of the mountains. I thought that was the end of it. The dramatic climax. I was wrong. The true climax, the point of no return, came 3 days later. It was another call from Mark. Alara, he said. And his voice was strained. Something's happened. Something bad. My heart, despite my newfound calm, did a little flip. What is it, Mark? I just got off the phone with the sheriff. The new owner of the house, he corrected himself. He said there was an incident last night. An incident? Someone tried to break in, Mark said, and he took a deep breath. He has a state-of-the-art security system. Multiple cameras, motion sensors, the works. It captured everything. High-definition video, clear as day. A cold feeling crept up my spine. Who was it? I asked, though I already knew. Mark's voice was heavy with disbelief. Alara, it was your father. The story, as the sheriff later recounted it to the police, and as Mark relayed to me, was a pathetic tragedy of arrogance and delusion. My father, Richard, simply could not accept that I had outmaneuvered him. He refused to believe the house was actually sold. In his mind, I had simply changed the locks to spite them, to play some kind of childish game. He was convinced that if he could just get inside, he could... What? I don't know. Change the locks back? Squat there until I gave in? The logic was non-existent, thought, so under the cover of darkness, he had driven his sensible sedan up the winding mountain road. He'd brought a toolbox with a crowbar, and the sheriff's high-definition cameras had recorded every moment in crystal-clear night vision. They recorded him trying his old key in the new lock. They recorded him peering in the windows. And they recorded him taking the crowbar and attempting to pry open the back door of a house that now belonged to the highest-ranking law enforcement officer in the county. The motion sensors tripped the silent alarm, which went directly to the sheriff's department. They arrived in minutes. They found him there, crowbar in hand, looking confused and indignant. They arrested him on the spot. Attempted breaking and entering. Malicious destruction of property. It was all there, on camera, irrefutable. When Mark finished telling me the story, I just sat there, phone to my ear, staring at a crack in my apartment wall. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel happy. I felt a deep, profound wave of sadness. Not for him, not anymore. but for the man he was supposed to be. For the father I thought I had, that man had never really existed. He was a fiction I had created. And the real man, the one who stood on a porch with a crowbar, was a stranger. The fallout was swift and brutal. It made the local news. Local. Man, former executive, arrested for attempting to burglarize own daughter's former home. The humiliation was absolute. The company he had been doing some consulting for, his last professional lifeline, dropped him immediately. My phone rang. Again, a few days later. An unblocked number I didn't recognize. I answered with caution. It was my mother. She was sobbing, a hysterical, gasping sound. "Alara, you have to help us," she cried. "Your father. They're pressing charges. He's going to have a criminal record. He lost his job. We need money for a lawyer, a good lawyer. You have all that money from the house. You have to help." And there it was. The final desperate attempt. The blame, the demand. It was my fault. He tried to commit a crime. My money was their solution. I took a deep breath. I thought of the years of sacrifice, the casual dismissal of my feelings, the plot to commit forgery, the entitled rage of my sister, the man with the crowbar. And I found my final words for her. "No, Mom," I said, and my voice was devoid of heat, of anger, of anything but finality. "I don't have to do anything. You did this. He did this. You plotted to steal from me. He tried to break into a police officer's house. These are the consequences of your own actions. You're on your own." She started to scream, a torrent of blame and curses, but I didn't listen. I pressed the block this caller button. And for the last time, I severed the connection. The months that followed were quiet. The only news I got came in trickles from my Aunt Susan, my mother's sister, a pragmatic woman who had always seen the dynamic in our family for what it was. She would call every few weeks just to check in. She told me my father, thanks to a beleaguered public defender and his clean prior record, avoided jail time. He got 2 years of probation and a hefty fine. They had to drain what was left of their retirement savings to pay for it, and the damages to the sheriff's store. She told me he never found another job. No one would hire a 65-year-old man with a recent conviction for breaking and entering. She told me Chloe and her husband never got their dream house. With no down payment and their own mountain of debt, they couldn't get approved for a mortgage. After the baby was born, they had to move out of their tiny apartment and into my parents' house. 3 generations, stewing in a broth of failure and resentment under one roof. My mother, my father, the golden child, her husband, and their new baby, all living off Social Security and my sister's part-time salary in the house I had kept them from losing for 2 long years, and me. I thrived. I took the money from the sale and I built a fortress. Not of wood and stone, but of security and peace. I'm debt-free. I have a savings account that makes me feel safe. I have a retirement fund that means I will never be a burden to anyone. I started going to therapy. My therapist gave me a name for what I had experienced. Financial abuse. She called it. It was a pattern, she said, of control and manipulation using money as a weapon. The casual expectation that I pay their mortgage. The dismissal of my own financial well-being. The ultimate plan to steal my largest asset. Hearing it defined, categorized, was like being given a map to a country I had been lost in my whole life. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I should feel guilty. Society tells us that family is everything, that a daughter should honor her parents, that cutting ties is a cruel and unnatural act. But then I remember the coldness in my mother's voice when she described the forgery. I remember the entitled rage in my sister's. I remember the image of my father with a crowbar in his hand, and I feel no guilt. I feel nothing but a vast, quiet, and profound sense of peace. The best decision I ever made was not buying that mountain house. The best decision I ever made was selling it. I didn't lose a home. I reclaimed my life. And I learned that sometimes the most radical act of love is not loyalty to the family you were born into, but loyalty to the person you have fought so hard to become. The silence I have now, right here in my own quiet life, is a silence I have earned, and it is the most beautiful sound in the world.